Hey everyone, I want to give a couple of examples of inspired questions and just recap the longer training I did on inviting diligent learning, helping learners develop the ability to discuss the gospel with others. Now, if you've read on this page, you know the basic principle behind this training is that one of the best ways we can help our students want to and be able to discuss the gospel with others is by giving them powerful discussion experiences in class. It both gives them the motivation because they're going to feel the truth of what they're studying, and it gives them the practice because they're going to practice discussing the gospel in meaningful ways. One way we can do that is by asking inspired questions. And so I want to model a little bit of what those might look like. Just to introduce to recap what inspired questions are. An inspired question is, at the very least, one that is specific to the individual you're asking a question to. In other words, this isn't a question about what we know, it's a question about what that individual student or that small group of students in front of you knows. When we ask these kinds of questions, it helps students care about their experience. Inspired questions are significant. They focus on truths, not just details or information. And when we do that, the students have the ability or the greater ability to change because we're studying the gospel of Jesus Christ. Third, inspired questions are spacious. They allow students space to express their thoughts and their feelings. They're not closed-ended or single word answer questions. And these help students to connect with others because as they start sharing their thoughts, because the question is so open-ended, other people are going to want to share their thoughts, feelings, and experiences as well. And so I want to give a couple of examples of some questions we might be drawn to ask and how we could change those to be more inspired. And I'm going to use section 84 because I think that's a section that you will probably want to teach on one of your flex days this fall. And so even though it's in the past, hopefully it's relevant for you. Let's say that you are studying with your students at the beginning of section 84, right where the Lord is explaining the priesthoods that he offers to his children. And so you might, after asking them to read a couple of verses, ask them, what two priesthoods does God give his children? What are the names of the two priesthoods? And if you're anything like me, you can picture the moment in class when you ask that question and there's the pause, the awkward silence. Maybe you say something like, come on, guys, it's in the verses, look for it. What are the names of the two priesthoods? And then one wonderful student finally volunteers and says, Aaronic and Melchizedek priests. You go, great, thank you. It's not a bad question, but we can make it more inspired. That question is not specific. You're not asking a question about what your students think or feel. It's not specific to them. It's a general question. It's not really significant. Now, I don't mean that the two priesthoods aren't significant, but I mean identifying the correct name of the priesthoods isn't the most important thing students can be doing. We want them to connect to that power, not merely be able to identify it. And it's certainly not spacious. It's a very closed-ended question, so closed-ended, in fact, that you already have the answer in mind. You're trying to get information from your head into theirs, rather than trying to get information from their heart or their mind or heart into yours, which is what a question is meant to do. And so you might instead do something like this. Maybe you explain to your students that these verses deal with powers God has and that he uses to benefit his children. And once you have that truth in place, you could possibly ask a question like this. What does God do with his power that you would want him to do for you in your life? Will you read verses 19 through 22, and maybe you jump to 45 through 48? And I want to know what power you see God explaining, or what he does with that power that you would want him to do for you in your life. Or you could also ask, as you study those verses and see what God does with his power, when have you seen God use his power in that way in your life? Now that's specific to your students. Only they can answer it. It's significant. It's about God's power, and it's certainly spacious. There are so many thoughts and experiences that they could possibly share. Another example, let's say you're at the end of section 84 and you're looking at some of the verses that are aimed at missionaries that are being sent out. You could ask the question, what responsibilities did the Lord give to early missionaries? Again, it's not specific. You're not asking about your students' specific perspectives or experiences or thoughts or feelings. That's a generally answerable question. It's maybe somewhat significant, but identifying responsibilities the Lord gave missionaries 200 years ago isn't going to change your students' lives. And again, it's not very spacious. They're going to find some things that are written there, and that's it. And so we might ask a question instead that goes like this. After you explain to students that this section, this portion of section 84, is the Lord giving instruction and counsel to those he sends out to preach the gospel. And our students have been asked by their prophet to share and preach the gospel. They're nervous about it. They may not know how to do it. And so let's look at these verses and see what the Lord would say to those he sends out to preach his gospel. And I want to know, as you read verses 80 through 88, I want to know what line of comfort or instruction makes you most want to talk to someone else about the gospel of Jesus Christ. As you read these verses, what line, what instruction, what comfort makes you most want to share the gospel with someone else? It's more specific. I'm interested in what my individual students think. It's related to the counsel instruction God could give them in their life, and it's spacious. They can answer with any number of thoughts and feelings and maybe even experiences. Those are just two examples. If you want more, you can watch the full training where we practice this, and we got a lot of great questions, but practice this on your own. Take some questions you find from the manual, see if you can make them more specific, significant, and spacious. And watch your discussions in class change and your students' desire and ability to share the gospel outside of class improve.